The context in which we have represented Medusa has changed significantly over the course of time. Medusa is an instantly recognizable figure within Greek mythology, often referred to as the Gorgon. While the moral of her fable varies through the lens of often misogynistic viewpoints, such as representations varying from grotesque to gorgeous, this presentation aims to investigate how the representations of Medusa has changed over time. This is shown through various sources from art and literature, including Ovid's Metamorphoses, artifacts from the Archaic period, Peter Paul Rubens' Head of Medusa, and Polygnotus's depiction of the Gorgon. While there are several ancient recounts of Medusa's origin story, Ovid, a Roman poet, is the author of one of the most influential and canonical accounts of Medusa. She is described by him as a beautiful mortal woman who had devoted her life to live chastely. Her story through Metamorphosis entails a narrative in which Medusa is seduced into the temple of Minerva by Neptune, in which he rapes her. Though, as Minerva is the virgin goddess, Medusa is met with the tragic fate of being turned into a monster as punishment. To punish that great crime, Minerva changed the Gorgon's splendid hair to serpents horrible, and now to strike her foes with fear, she wears upon her breast those awful vipers, creatures of her rage. This depiction of Medusa further became the staple for audiences alike to view Medusa as a horrific monster, known for seducing and killing men by looking into their eyes. This would then influence the triumph felt as Perseus murders her by cutting off her head, which leads us into the long history of viewing Medusa as a villain. The overall message that can be concluded through Ovid's recount is a warning for mortals to not believe themselves to be equals to gods. As Medusa wasn't the initiator of Neptune's actions, she, being a mortal woman, was still susceptible to being punished by the gods. Throughout the Archaic period, Medusa was frequently portrayed as a hideous and malicious figure. This can be seen through the discovered Etruscan terracotta antefixes featuring Medusa's head, which is dated back to the 6th century BCE. This antefix's depiction of Medusa shows her to have large eyes, a ferocious grin, fangs for teeth, and a tongue that protrudes from her mouth. This accurately depicts the belief of Medusa's story following her curse implemented by Minerva. A common design for terracotta antefixes includes decorative covers used to conceal the ends of tiles along the edge of a roof, and it was typically symbolized through the head of the Gorgon Medusa, also known as the Gorgonian. In order to ward off evil spirits, Gorgon antefixes were frequently featured in ancient art, which is evident from a second representation of Medusa, who has snake-filled hair, a beard, protruding fangs, menacing eyes, and a stuck-out tongue. The commonality of using these terracotta tiles enforces the idealistic view of Medusa being the villain, emphasizing the strong universal belief of her villainous nature. In Peter Paul Rubens' sublime painting in 1618, we are narrated back to the decapitation and sudden death of Medusa. It illustrates a unique perspective into the representations of the Gorgon and her death. It depicts Medusa's severed head with its encircled snakes, presumably from her hair. Dutch poet, civil servant, and patron of the arts Constantijn Huygens explains the emotion that Rubens inflicts on its viewers. In this painting, he has composed the sight of a marvelously beautiful woman, who is still attractive, but also causes horror because death has just arrived, and evil snakes hang around her temples, with such inexpressible deliberation that the viewer is suddenly caught by her terror. Through this artwork, the sympathetic undertones of Medusa are alluded to. In contrast to numerous representations of Medusa's severed head, such as the bronze sculpture by Benedetto Cellini, in which a victorious Perseus is parading Medusa's decapitated head to the world while standing on top of her naked body, Rubens did not use her head as a symbol of success. Though the narrative of Medusa has remained relatively the same, by the classical period the depictions of Medusa had begun to diversify and change. A terracotta pellic painted by Polygnotus presents a unique portrayal while maintaining the essence of its mythical story. She is depicted as gorgeous rather than the original narrative and depictions of her grotesqueness. Painted on the pellic, we see a relatively normal-looking woman whose only abnormal feature is a pair of wings. In this pellic, Perseus is sneaking up towards an innocently sleeping Medusa as Minerva is watching Perseus prepare to decapitate her. It is evident that during this point of time within the 5th century BC, the perceptions of Medusa were beginning to shift and transform through depicting her as beautiful and narrating a sense of innocence within. Similarly, an Attic red figure bell crater painted by Villa Julia during 460 to 450 BC narrates a similar portrayal in which Perseus is sneaking up on a sleeping Medusa. However, through this painting, Medusa does seem to stick to her Gorgon roots as she is depicted with a squashed nose and a protruding tongue. Both depictions show Minerva and Perseus to look solemn as all of the tension is focused towards Medusa, who is peacefully asleep. Therefore, it can be concluded that these two artifacts were potentially intended to depict a sympathetic lens on Medusa's death, rather than a condescending and victorious one, which is seen through the reactions of the other characters, and not on Medusa herself. Considering all the information, it can be concluded that Medusa is a constantly changing face for society and will most likely continue to change through its representations. As can be seen through her depictions of the good, Peter Paul Rubens' head of Medusa, the bad, Ovid's metamorphosis and archaic antefexes, and finally the victim, Polygnus's terracotta Peleg and Villa Julia's Attic red figure Belcrata. While the representations are changing, modern portrayals are beginning to flourish through their feminist lenses to break through the misogynistic portrayals seen in the ancient world. And it can be interpreted through all these depictions that Medusa will remain a symbol to ward off evil intentions.